Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you'll meet an expert on ketamine therapy. What is it and why has it become so popular? His journey just ahead.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
So my next guest, I've known for probably 20 plus years. Dr. Ross Stewart is in the studio. He's the guy that I used to interview when I was at Channel 4 on all things mental health. He was on this show a few months ago, but he contacts me and he says, Jeff, I need to come back. I need to tell people about the power of ketamine therapy. So Dr. Ross, thanks for coming back on the show.
It's really a pleasure to see you again, Jeff.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'm impressed with this because ketamine, I think, has a kind of a street drug quality to the name, and when you say ketamine to people, they think, oh wow, that's some kind of illegal narcotic, but it has great medicinal purposes.
It is currently the rage medicinally in the mental health community. Basically what we're looking at is depression, especially treatment-resistant depression, anxiety, PTSD, and so many other things that ketamine can, in a very short period of time, make a truly significant, permanent difference in a person's life. And so it's the rage. It's extremely well researched all the way from Stanford to Johns Hopkins, and the results are stunning. And I've now been doing it long enough that I can attest they are stunning.
Awesome. Okay, more with Dr. Ross in a minute. As I was doing homework for this show, I found a number of news pieces. This one was done in Charlotte.
Mecklenburg County State Rep proposed a bill to fund research for psychedelic-assisted therapy for veterans and others suffering from PTSD.
But there's already illegal drug use in hospitals and veterinary clinics that can have similar therapeutic effects when used the right way.
Queen City News anchor Annie Zatowski takes us to a new health center right here in Charlotte using ketamine to help patients break through huge mental barriers.
Yeah.
Lindsay Rowe is a different person than she was back in February.
At that point, I had spent all of December and January in bed.
COVID lockdowns severely impacting her role as a youth therapist in the local school district, leading to burnout and then deep depression.
Medication had stopped working, and the medication that would sort of work, I was numb.
But then she got a literal sign to try something she says fixed her brain. Ketamine.
I randomly happened upon it. A girlfriend of mine brought me to one of the free vitamin drips, and I saw on the sign that said ketamine, and I was like, what is this?
While most hear ketamine and think about street drugs and bad trips, Dr. Jonathan Leake sees a vehicle for healing.
So we're primarily focused on helping people with treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, anxiety, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and those type of ailments.
Dr. Leake is the medical director and CEO of the newly opened DeReve Health in Dilworth, nestled right between a coffee house and a grocery store that feels more like a spa than a clinic.
So we schedule for 2 hours for door-to-door, and so when you come in for the first time, we spend anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour ahead of time, and that's just kind of discussing your history, what's been going on, what brings you in today, and then really starting the preparation for the session.
Ketamine is infused slowly through an IV over roughly 40 minutes, while the client wears eye shades and noise-canceling headphones with music, 2 things shown to help people relax and disconnect.
They're aware of what's going on around them. They're even able to talk and communicate, but really they may enter kind of this psychedelic type realm where it's a little bit of like a dreamlike state, but you're awake. It's allowing the client to have a conversation with themselves. They're kind of able to look at their behaviors, their thoughts, their feelings, and kind of go, oh, that's what that's all about, or oh, that's why I do that maybe.
After Afterwards, clients are required to have a designated person to get them home safely. They're also encouraged to take it easy for the next 24 hours. While counseling isn't part of a Derev session, Dr. Leek encourages clients to talk with a therapist, a trusted friend or family member, or even use a journal to unpack their experience.
And we find that ketamine really kind of opens people up, and so it allows those sessions to kind of be more meaningful and kind of go a little bit deeper as well.
Lindsay says her sessions were like seeing her life as an observer.
I didn't hallucinate at all. I didn't see anything. I saw like maybe a few colors, but nothing special. When I like remembered like negative experiences of my past, it was very much like I was watching a movie.
Dr. Leek, who's also an emergency medical doctor, has used ketamine countless times for hospital procedures and explains the line between anesthetic and psychedelic is all about dosage.
When we use it as a psychedelic, what we do is we actually use about a quarter of that dose.
And research has shown it's non-addictive.
You know, using ketamine in a therapeutic setting versus using it in the street is, you know, just kind of like as different as meat and vegetables. You know, they're just two totally different things.
A simple Google search turns up dozens of ketamine clinics in Charlotte that have been around for years. And while the treatment is becoming more widely accepted, Dr. Leek hopes state legislation can open up doors to other treatments.
A lot of mental health has been applying a Band-Aid to symptoms. And so it's really exciting with psychedelic therapy and ketamine therapy to have something that you can do for a period of time, you know, maybe 3 months, 2 months, you know, somewhere in that range, several sessions, and then can have kind of long-lasting change.
The entire course of treatment at Derev is about 6 sessions. And now that time has come and gone, Lindsay says for the first time in a while, she's hopeful.
I'm not as sad anymore. Or I'm not ruminating on that thought that I had been for the past month, you know. And I just started to notice a difference in my thought patterns, and I started to feel lighter.
Okay, so does that pretty much accurately describe what you're experiencing?
That's pretty much it. You know, I've been through this over and over and over and over again, and that person described it pretty accurately.
Yes.
With some nuances, I think, that are important nuances. For example, I won't take anyone in our clinic who doesn't have a counselor. Here's why. You're going to have a psychedelic experience. Now, we know this stuff's been around since 1970, very well researched, and it's now off-label to do this psychedelic journey to break the back of depression, for example. But a lot happens that you don't really have a clear direction to head unless you're well prepared for it. So we sit down with our people and say, really, what is your experience of being alive right now? What do you want to be different? And we go into the details so that the unconscious mind is going to guide this journey can have a clear direction as to where it's going and what it's supposed to do. Otherwise, it might just run wild inside your brain.
Sure.
So we want to guide it, and then after the event, you're going to take at least an hour the day of and at least an hour later to help a person interpret what they experienced and incorporate it into their permanent brain, their permanent life.
You and I had a chance to visit just before the show, and you have some strong feelings about antidepressants.
Oh, boy. I've dealt with brain chemistry now for 24 years. And I help manage depression, anxiety, ADHD, Parkinson's disease, and a number of other significant brain problems. And the battle I was constantly facing is Prozac, Wellbutrin, it doesn't matter what it is. You ready for the number? What percentage of people in a medical study were actually helped long-term with those drugs? 7%. That means 93% of the people taking them do not get a positive benefit, and you stay with them long enough and you're going to get permanent brain damage. Cut me a break.
So tell me what it is. How does ketamine work in the brain?
Here's how we think it works. There's still a great mystery about what's going on in the brain, which is delightful, actually. The executor part of your brain, which monitors everything, gets to just stop being active and just observe what's going on. And you take a look at a brain scan, and before ketamine, you see a few electrical charges going off here and there. Then you do the ketamine, and you see the brain explodes with activity. That means every part of the brain is now connected to every other part. So let's say there's a wounded part over here that's a depressed cycle. And it has very strong neural pathways that keep taking you there. Well, all of a sudden it gets weakened and something else happens. And so, and also the pain of that particular area has been anesthetized because ketamine is an anesthetic. So you come out of the experience and you say, I can't find the sadness anymore. Hold it, I can't find it. The only way you find it is if something bad happens, you lose your dog or cat or a person or something, and then you feel appropriate sadness. But after a couple, it's either 2 to 6 journeys, it's a permanent change from everything we can tell. And other parts of the brain have come to the rescue, and that wounded part isn't wounded anymore.
We've got some more video that I want to show while we're talking about this, and you and I were talking about potential patients that could benefit from this.
Yes.
And a big category is military.
Oh boy. We got exposed, do it now?
Yeah.
We got exposed to wounded women warriors. And so we met with them, and at that time we didn't have ketamine. And we looked at the treatment programs they were being exposed to that didn't work. We're working with some government people right now to rekindle that relationship, because now we have some answers that really do help, to take them to the other side of that and allow them to live a full life, not be self-identified as I am a victim forever and have been betrayed by everything that's important to me.
Sure. Let's talk about finding the right therapist, and why is that so critical?
One of the things that became popular once it was known that ketamine was so effective is that doctors would say, well, I'm going to prescribe it for you, go get some injections of it, and you're on your own. Well, people weren't prepared, they weren't guided correctly. They didn't have a focus on it. Then they have a psychedelic experience, and they didn't know what it meant. I'll give you an example of it. On Friday, I was working with somebody who, during the experience, they were doing this during the experience. It wasn't until afterwards, when we were talking about it, that this woman came to the understanding that this is her father loving her, giving her advice as to how to live the rest of her life because he loved her and cared about her. The change in that woman was profound.
Wow.
But she couldn't tell it from the experience. It had to be a really deep conversation about what this meant. So that's an example of it. But clear focus and understanding what your experience was and taking full advantage of this great experience that you've just had.
Sure.
Any number of people went and bought a package of 6 injections. We don't do injections, we do lozenges. And after one experience, they said, I'm not going back again. They had an odd experience that they couldn't benefit from and said, I'm not doing that ever again in my life.
Wow.
I'm going. So with us, we are so cautious, first of all, who we take. We have a thorough medical examination that goes first. When the medical people approve, that we go in and we interview these people extensively to make sure we've got something psychologically to offer them before, during, and after their ketamine experience. The demand at this point in my life is, I'm going to get a magnificent result.
Wow.
I'm
so impressed for this segment and how you're educating a new generation of people who could benefit. We've got a couple minutes left. Final thoughts. What would you like to leave people with?
There are so many people out, and this all over the world now, but especially in the United States, who can't look forward to a future that they want to live into. You say, well, what percentage of it? Well, when you say 70%, that's a lot of people. So 70% of the population says, I'm not sure I want to be here. You think that's serious?
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And so the real message here is that with ketamine, you stand a very good chance of building a future that you want to live into and finding the motivation to go do it. Now, I have an office in Las Colinas, Dr. Clara Aragod, and we have a Dallas office at Hillcrest and LBJ. So we've got 2 locations, and I'll tell you, the work it's a privilege to be there and to do it. This is really good stuff.
Very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. We're going to end with his website, which is bmb-coaching.com. The great Dr. Ross Stewart. Thanks for coming on the show. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.